Hello, New Mexicans. My name is Lisa. Here to do my probably, I think, fifth session in our New Mexico's technology initiative as part of the Tech Bits project. So I'm going to go forward and begin sharing my screen. You will see that we are recording these sessions and they will be posted on our Region 9 New Mexico website, where you will click the TechBits link, and I encourage everyone to do so. There is no one in front of me personally at the moment, but I very much hope that some of you will be reviewing this in the archived section, where you'll find every single recorded session that has been presented this year. So for today's session, we will be covering the topic of creating visual supports using Microsoft Publisher. Publisher basics will cover, project options. We'll definitely view some samples that I've created and others that I've found myself. With time allowing, we'll just go in to do an actual video trip in Publisher to start a document to show everyone how you might do that. Extremely easy. Publisher is a program in the Microsoft Office suite that I probably, as a trainer and as an educator, use most often of any program that I use, because it's basically a blank slate whereby you can create anything. So hopefully after this session, you'll go back and try. I did notice on the schedule of TechBits, one of the other REC presenters is also doing a section on Microsoft Publisher 101, as I did last week. So there are many versions and all of us have different levels of skill sets. So I really hope that you all will go into the REC9 website and look at all the sponsored trainings by the Public Ed Department. I'm moving forward this event housekeeping list just because there's no one in front of me at the moment. But hopefully you're doing something like that in your classrooms so that you can prepare your own students every day. There are many, there are many options and alternatives for what I'm using in Microsoft Publisher. So Microsoft Publisher is a desktop publishing software program whereby you can create anything. We'll talk in a second. However, Publisher as a program is not offered on a Mac or on the Apple devices. You do know that Microsoft Word, for example, you can do in a Mac, and some of the other programs in Microsoft. But as far as Publisher goes, Publisher is not available on Macs. It is only available on a PC, but there are many options. So that does not limit being able to use a desktop publishing program. Like what I'm going to be showing you in Publisher, in Google Docs. You can see from my key, the ones that have one asterisk next to the name are those that you can go online and download for free, learn them, and begin creating your own projects. So you can see some of them, like Canva, would be at a price. But in my research for this, the prices really aren't outrageous, depending upon your level of need for programs like this. But I believe that you could find a perfectly suitable free program if you're not able to utilize Microsoft Office Publisher and you're using a Mac, for example. So there are many alternatives. So in addition to visual supports that we'll be covering today, though, I briefly just wanted to mention that this presentation is talking about, creating visual supports that you might use in the classroom. But the same types of visuals support you might use in a classroom are supports you might use in your day-to-day life, in your day-to-day socialization with friends and family. So you can do flyers, newsletters, signs, and posters. That would be in the classroom too. You would create something in Publisher or another program, print it into a poster on the poster makers that most school districts, if not all school districts, have at least one of. And it can be a visual support in your classroom, not to mention a visual support for guiding families around your school, all around your school for what's happening in your school, to be placed on easels, for example. You can create announcements, personal and professional, note cards, greeting cards, pamphlets and brochures, certificates, awards, invitations, business cards, labels for anything that you might be mailing, or labels for your student folders, labels for notebooks, student binders, etc. Creating your own calendars, resumes, menus. You might use menus in the classroom, but you might be having a family restaurant that you want to create a menu for. I mean, banners of any kind, etc. I mean, the sky is the limit. I love this program. I'm an extremely visually dominant learner. I didn't learn that using these programs and creating desktop publishing projects for all kinds of purposes was a niche that I didn't know my brain had until I was 40. So these are skill sets that you might learn something that activates a niche in your brain, which it did for me. And I remember learning from Rest Your Soul, Marlene, and some of the other people when I started at REC4 back in 2001. And it just spoke to my brain using visuals and creating things in this medium to where I surpassed everyone's skill set because I was so into it, and I was able to do it so quickly. And that just happens to be my brain. And I think it might be some of your brains too. So back to visual supports. I just hope that you will start thinking this way, that you can create your own materials. You don't have to buy them. You don't have to look online and see what you can purchase. You can create your own by looking online at samples, looking at the samples I'm creating here for you. Emailing me after the session. If you're reviewing an archived session and you see samples that I'm going to be showing you, I'm perfectly willing to share them as Word documents or publisher documents that you can then take back to your classrooms and tweak them. A PDF document would not do you any good because you can't change those. So I'm more than willing to share, but contact me and you'll be seeing my contact information at the end of the presentation. So visual schedules, display or agendas or any kind of visual support displays activities, symbols, planned things that you have, pictures, photographs, icons, and actual objects, if appropriate, that are understood in the order in which you will be presenting things in your classroom. So it's another way, hopefully an added way, that you can present the information that you're presenting verbally in your classrooms and things that you expect for your students to know and understand and remember. As we all know, I hope, we depend upon visual supports in our day-to-day lives, that without such, we would have car accidents, we would get lost, we wouldn't know where to go in an office building, etc. Your phones, our use of cell phones is absolutely reliant on visuals, right? Because you have icons for every application on your phone. So at your grocery list. I mean, as I said, I'm an extremely visual learner, which also means one of the hazards of that is that if I don't have something on a visual schedule that I depend on, it's not going to get done, or I'm going to forget it. I mean, honestly, at my 60 plus years on this planet, if I go to the grocery store without my list, I'm coming home with spice drops, potato chips, etc. And I say this in jest, but it's true. We've all done it. So please understand this is everyday life. And by using supports in your classroom, this is not just for students with disabilities, students who are slow learners. This is for all of us, including your EAs, the adults that walk in your classroom, their principals, so that they can see what you're doing every day when they're observing you. I mean, these need to be visible in your classrooms, and they can be anything. They can be symbols, agendas. I encourage every teacher from pre-K to 12 to grade 12, label things in your classroom. Label them. If you're a high school AP English class, label the things in your classroom and have a slash with another word for that you might find in a thesaurus, so that you're increasing students' vocabulary. So anything can be a visual timers, not just a timer you can hear that dings, but perhaps visual timers that actually show the quadrants of the time as the time wanes down. You can see a pie of the red mark that gets smaller and smaller and smaller until the dinger goes off, or until the visual stopper will activate. Tactile things, wearable things for students. signs, written rules, maybe personal set of written rules for students who might need that, gestures, using sign language, ASL, but gestures you might use to get kids' attention and transition to another activity, applications, using student cell phones in the classroom with paradigms or with limits or boundaries on that. I think we are not behind the 8 ball on that. Every student has, almost every student has access to a cell phone during classroom hours. And so instead of fighting with students for not use them, why don't we incorporate those cell phones into our day-to-day teaching? Applications that you can download for free for the use of cell phones in the classroom. So why use visual supports? Because they help us get organized. They help give instructions that are accessible to students and adults all day long, not just when you made the announcement. They express and understand information. They show us what's going to happen. I've given you an example. My children are grown, but I remember my oldest son, who's now 30, turned 30 last month, was a very visual learner, but what was very anxious about school and had processing challenges, etc. But I remember as a 2.5 to 3-year-old, we would be running errands as we were building the house and all of that, and be kicking the back of my seat because he was just wanting to, now I know, wanting to know what was going on. So I took my parent hat off, put my teacher hat on, and started using a verbal schedule and gave him a little visual thing that we would do because he was young. And all my kids, I had 3 at the time, young ones, that first we're going to go here, then we're going to go there, then we have to do this, and then we'll go to story time, and then we'll go to Story Lake for lunch. I kid you not, people, the first time I did that for my children, I never had kicking on the back of my seat again. Because all students and children and people need to know is what's happening, especially when there's an expectation around what's happening. So show people what's going to happen. Use visual schedules for everyone. And I guarantee you, you will have EAs be more purposeful, be more organized, and be more effective in their teaching without being told what to do and sitting and waiting for you to tell them what to do. It clarifies expectations, helps students and adults move from activity to activity with less frustration. Just because a student, these things are not just for students with autism, which many teachers might think, but you have students who have anxiety, who have social emotional concerns that we need to make sure that we are addressing when we address trauma-informed instruction, for example. Visuals help reduce frustration and anxiety because students have them available to them at any given time and no one needs to know. Supports positive behavior. Visuals support transitions, smooth transitions without frustration, anxiety, and meltdowns or disruptions. It helps us to comprehend things like rules, expectations, and the conventions that you have in your day-to-day life, in the classroom, at school, and in life. So in my research of doing this and reading a couple of things and going online, of course, there was a quote. I don't do social media, but there was a quote in another article from a Twitter post from someone who was I believe this person, I can't remember if this person was a teacher. Yes, is a teacher, yes, who got input from their speech and language pathologist, but said, I no longer talk as much. At least I'm trying. That would be me. At least I'm trying, and now use more visuals. Both of these things allow more processing time for kids and adults. I am grateful to our SLPs, speech and language pathologist, who taught me so much about the importance of visuals. So even when you look at this graphic, they're permanent. They allow for language processing. Visuals prepare students for transitions. They help build independence and hence decrease dependence on the teacher. They help all students. They help students and everyone see what you mean. Visuals are transferable between environments, settings, and people. Visuals have no attitude, no tone, no frustration, no disapproval. They are there to support. They don't judge like we many times can. Visuals help reduce anxiety. So please understand. And that's a little graphic here where I'm circling with my cursor. You can see that would be an example of a visual timer that reduces that red part as the time wanes. So here's some examples of some visual supports. There are common ways to present visual supports that I'm sure, well, that I hope that you all who view this are using at least a visual schedule. Like this one is an elementary example, but these poster pocket charts can be used, once again, pre-K to 12th grade AP. It doesn't matter, it just matters how you display. So you can see these many examples that I have taken pictures of to insert in the slide. It can be as simple as a chalkboard listing something if you're not good at making things. But I have samples of all the things here that you can see, checklists, agendas, where you could put one of those paper agendas inside one of the, the plastic page protectors that you can slide a piece of paper down into. Every student can have a binder, and you could have an agenda for each of your students whereby they could check it off, put their name, write the date, and then when you're checking papers or checking binders, you can enter that information into your grade book, erase it with an eraser or a Kleenex, and it's prepared for the next day. And you can reduce copying dittos, you can reduce all of those kinds of things, and students and teachers are both involved in the learning and the demonstration of understanding. So these are just some examples here. More examples, because visuals will maximize learning. These examples you might use with younger students or students with disabilities, or even tweaking a project that I created for your own use, depending upon the student. But visuals help everyone. I'm going to say this a million times. You can see all of these samples here, with the exception of that last notebook, but I made a sample binder, a sample folder for a student or for an example of how you might use visual schedules and agendas for an individual student binder that they would have that has different dividers, maybe for different times of the day or different teachers, different settings, different goals, etc. So on these slides, all of the samples that you can see here, except for the black notebook in the center, I have made as prototypes. So if you're interested in those publisher documents, Word documents, etc., all you have to do is email me and I will email those files to you. As you can see the sample over here, today's to-do list, that is simply a cardboard box panel covered with duct tape and some little adhesive hooks that just the little cards slid under. The now and the next shapes are basically tag board or colored construction paper with a printed label glued to a clothespin. So teachers, we all need to be creative and make things. Just because we're in 2023 with technology, make materials, have students help you make materials, your EAs, because then your materials meet your exact need and it costs you nothing. So moving forward, other samples, flip cards or keychain schedules that students can handle themselves or use as reminders without having to ask the teacher. You could use a flip schedule whereby a teacher might be walking around the classroom. Maybe your students are talking, so he or she might walk between the two desks of the girls that are talking and show them the little card that says quiet. Just a simple reminder, and you're not judging, you're not calling kids out, you're not embarrassing them in public, etc., etc., etc. And the one here that I took a picture of in the blue little flip cards, those were made for a specific student that you might be sitting at a reading table with students and with another student next to you that say might be distractible, have autism, have another type of disability that needs reminders. And so those reminders might be specific ones to that student's goals. More examples. Actually, I saw this example online and I loved it so much because we know, we don't teach cursive anymore. We really don't have kids sign in that often. Some teachers do, I hope, but this is a great way to do that. And what I did in my trainings, and I use it as a teacher example, get a Word document, insert 2 columns of a table, alternating gray and white, like it looks here. And you have that panel on the right side. And then you could have your students' names first or last, or what have you, or maybe printed. And then they have to sign with cursive. Or if they're younger, they just have to write their name if they're just learning their name. But you could have that printed into a poster, have it tacked right next to the door every single day when kids are dropping off their things, and they sign in after they drop their backpacks, put stuff in cubbies, or when they're just walking in a classroom with their older students and taking their things to their desk. You could have this posted right next to the door. First thing you do when you come in is you sign in. It's also an attendance check, an accountability tool, and it also can be a progress monitoring tool so that you can take a picture of it, say on the first week of school, and then take a picture of it first quarter, second quarter, third 9 weeks, and at the end to show progress monitoring on your students' fine motor skills, handwriting skills, following directions, et cetera, et cetera. I love that example. I just loved it. Other examples where students use clips, you can use clips or clothespins. If a student is leaving the classroom, going somewhere else, going to a therapy session, going to a particular counseling group, a tutoring session, etc. But these, for me, and as a teacher, I would use prototypes that I would see as an example. And then if it spoke to me, then I could create my own. And then you have them forever. And you can make multiple sets so that you have multiple groups, maybe that you might have doing the same thing, or you might have multiple areas in your classroom that have certain rules at those areas that you can have a visual instruction as to how many students are supposed to be there, what are they supposed to be doing there, etc. I like this one. This was for an elementary classroom, but a teacher would have a manila folder or such taped to the side of each table desk with a list of what the teacher wants that child to do. This could be tweaked for any age student. It could be in a binder if it's private. Every student could have the exact same thing on the side of their desk. And then the teacher can see it as they move around the classroom. And the students had been taught that when they finish, they're supposed to check it off, and that the teacher will be the one to erase things after she records or he records into your grade book. So these are just for an idea, but you can take it to the limit of how you would use that. But remember, I always try to remind teachers about confidentiality and privacy. Some students might not want other people seeing where they are in the schedule, or that they even have a visual support schedule that they're using. So that could be easily rectified by keeping it quiet in a student binder, or a private place where students can go along and give you the information you need, get their work done without other students needing to know their stuff. That becomes especially important as students get older, whether they have a disability or not. So here's some publisher basics. As I said, this is Microsoft Publisher. This is my desktop. I had a scrolling picture. This is Atticus and RBG on a picture on my desktop. So Publisher, again, is Microsoft Word, Microsoft Office product. Again, Publisher is not available on an Apple device or a Mac device, but there are many other alternatives for equally and comparable reasons. That would be in Google Docs or Google Slides or something like that. So anyway, Publisher basics here. You would go to your start menu. Mine are on my toolbar. I have my toolbar personalized, and I'll explain that as we go along. Or you would go to your little program icon, your start menu, click that, and usually that will show you a list of all the programs, even if you have an older version on your operating system, but you would either double click it or right click it. Here I right clicked, and then it gives me a list of all the programs. I can scroll down, find Microsoft Publisher, either double click it to create a new program, or I can right click where it would show me a bunch of different options like it does here. And it also shows me all the recent Publisher programs that I've been working in. If you look at the top of that oval, it says pin to start, or it might, in my case, it would say unpin from start. So if you want to learn to create your toolbars like I have at the bottom of my screen of programs that I use all the time, you would just go to Publisher, right click on it, and you would put pin to start. And then you would have the Publisher shortcut right in the toolbar like I have. So we would click whatever program, or we would open a new program that way. This is the publisher toolbar. Once you open a brand new clean publisher document, this is the toolbar just divided into two, so that I could fit it on the slide and make it big enough for you all to see. The circled ones are the things that I use most. But that's my brain. And I learned it just by clicking them. You can't break anything in Publisher or Word or PowerPoint. You always have the undo button. If you're not saving, when I'm practicing, I would save moving along, but as you're learning, don't save, because you always have the background button or the go back or the undo button. But I always use insert pages, insert tables, insert pictures, because in Publisher, you basically have a blank slate right in front of you, depending upon the template that you choose, whether it's a document or a certificate or a label, etc. Inserting shapes, inserting text boxes. You could insert a calendar, borders, word art. Word art, you can do fonts with colors and outlined borders, and different types of things in word art. But sometimes if you have a lot of words in word art, I would use the text box, and you can create the same effects. Word art for like one big word or a couple of big words, I think it's best for. Otherwise, I use the drawing text box, even if I'm making a title that's supposed to be wacky and big and bordered. You can insert page numbers, the date and time of something, headers and footers. If you want to put your school district or your classroom header, Miss Lisa Simpson's classroom, 5th grade classroom, with the footer of your district's name. It just looks so much more professional, and your parents will see that it just makes us all look professional, guys, when we have these skill sets, and we can professionalize the documents or the objects or the tools or the materials that we're using on a day-to-day basis in our classroom. So on to Publisher Basics. Okay, we're in Publisher, let's say, right? We went to our Publisher program that's installed in our computer, and we double-clicked on it. So when we double-clicked on that, you get this list here. This is just a print screen. You have a key on your keyboards always that say PRTSC, that's print screen. So if I wanted to print this for PowerPoint, so I printed my screen, and then pasted it into a slide, reduced it, changed the size and put a border around it. Because when you double click on Publisher, this is what you get. And so it shows you all the different options and templates that are available to you that Publisher can help you create. Now, I have used templates when I started learning this 20+ years ago. Now I have examples of certificates, pamphlets, posters that I really like for my purposes. So now I just go back to those actual projects and make copies of them, and then I tweak them. Because in that way, because there's no reason to reinvent the wheel, right, teachers, unless you want to. So for this example, let's say we want to make a certificate. It's coming to the end of the year. You might want to use award certificates or thank you certificates or parent certificates for their great job as parents, which would be really good too for parent involvement. So let's say for the sake of learning, you wanted to do a certificate. So I click on certificate. And when I click on certificate, I get these choices. And you can see built-in templates. From the home menu, I went to award certificates. And if this wasn't a picture, I could scroll down, and we'll go, when we do an actual little video trip, depending upon the time, we will do that. So anyway, we went to awards, and look at all these templates that are already installed. That does not mean that when you choose a template, it has to stay that way. It's a template. So when I would choose a template, like for myself, I would always choose basic ones. But let's say, for example, we chose this orange one that's highlighted here. So I selected that one, and then it showed up on the navigation window here on the right side. Okay, I can say, yes, that's the one I want. And then I would click create. And then once I clicked create, it's right there in front of me, right on a Publisher, brand new document there for me to go into and do whatever the heck I want. And so in Publisher, you guys, it's a template, but there's nothing on that page in front of us is set in stone. We can delete every color, every text box, every graphic, or change graphics, but it's a template. That way it gives you some guidance many people would go, well, where do I start? What do I do? What kind of information do I put on this? How do I format it so it looks visually pleasing? That's what templates are for. And then you just play with it and do whatever you want. So you would go in there, do whatever you want, create your project. Again, this is a rehash of our steps. Choose the template you want, or start with a blank white certificate in front of you and create what you want or tweak to your needs. You're going to save it, which means you'll rename it and save it in the folder that you desire. What I do, and then like I said, once I have samples, and keep all your samples, because those are likely, those will be what you use to copy for another project. And then it'll take you half the time because it was already, you already did the footwork and the foundational work for that certificate. And then all you have to do is use it next year, link it to another database if every kid's getting the same thing, or a newsletter or what have you. So like if it says here, I copy my favorite ones and then I redesign them, because we don't want to reinvent the wheel. Mail merging, I'm doing another TechBit session at the end of the month. I think it's either the end of the month or in May, on mail merging. If you wanted to use a certificate or a newsletter or a label that you're wanting to print with various names and information on them without typing them one by one after you print each one, which is ridiculous. And I know people that do that in offices at this moment. At this point in time, there are people in offices and schools typing names one by one into a certificate, as opposed to learning to mail merge and connect it to a database that you enter the names in once. You can see here all the recorded sessions, like I mentioned earlier, are at the REC 9 TechBits page, where you can access all these sessions, and this will be one of them. Once this is done and I send the recording, it will be posted. So these are more samples of visual supports, individual supports, for example, that you might put a word or a picture or a PEC symbol or a cue that says, first I do this, then I do that, next I do that, and then I'll be able to work for computer time, for example. Here's one that might be a visual support for major things you might be doing in the morning. You might have a clock for the break, or a written time, or a picture, wherever your students are developmentally in terms of sequencing ability, developmental understanding, and their ability to transition and sequence. This is a document. Again, email me if anybody is interested. This right here is actually a publisher document, because we're talking about publisher. This is actually an 11-page, this is just one page. It's landscape orientation, one page in a 10 to 11-page publisher document that has labels that could be laminated and cut out and then used every day to put in a slot board, a chart, a pocket chart, or anything to sequence the activities of the day. I also have a sample of the exact same document, only in for older students. You can see, and you could tweak it from that kind of font to, say, Lucinda handwriting that would show cursive. Or, because the point is the sky's the limit. You can do anything you want. My sister was visiting from Flagstaff just this weekend. They left yesterday. She brought one of her best friends, who's a good friend of mine. Her friend is having a Dia de los Muertos activity on May 5th, or not May 5th, on the Day of the Dead. And she wants to create a fan to give everybody that has pictures of all the loved ones they have that have passed away. And so, because I'm a publisher queen, we were working on this yesterday and it was so exciting to me. So I'm going to help her create a fan, and you can order fans online. You could even design them online and have them printed and pay for it, and you get them, which is, I think, what we're going to do. I have to do some research, but I'm going to create publisher all the pictures she sends me, create a picture file, and then upload that, and she'll have her fans printed for her celebration. So you can see I have the sample here in Publisher with larger picture strips. If you're working with younger students, and again, you can tweak whatever topics that you would have. And then one that looks a little bit more for teenagers or older students, or even adults, with a graphic that's age appropriate. Another sample, like I said, it's very important, I believe, and in the research it'll tell you, to be able to indicate what we're doing now, what will be coming next, etc. And those, like I told you earlier, on clothespins, and it would be easily just clipped from thing to thing. You could have a student helper be the person to be transitioning from activity to activity, which again helps a student focus, attend to make sure they're attending to what they need to be attending to. Another sample, many times we think these pocket charts are used only in kindergarten or in first grade. I absolutely disagree. They come as a blank slate. They're solid with acetate pockets. You could use this, like I said, in 12th grade math with homework pages, whatever the assignments are. Just so the point is, you need a visual agenda, period. Another sample that has times, an actual time for a clock. When kids are learning time, the kids use their phones. It's really still important for everyone to know how to read an analog clock, right? So we're teachers. We want to teach as much as we can when we have them. So this is just another sample. And you can see on the bottom of that schedule, they have some blank lines there so that you could plug in something unexpected or a treat or a surprise. So yeah, I kid you not, you will not believe how many, including yourself, people will depend on the visual supports, which we should, because that's the world. We want to depend on every piece of information, every cue we can find in the classroom that leads to learning. And again, I showed you that could be as simple as something like this, like a smart board that shows a chalkboard or an actual chalkboard. And if you think you can't write and your printing's not very good and you don't do very well, do it on the computer, or even just print things. Have a student scratch it out on a piece of paper. Have a student who has good penmanship, or the weekly student helper be the one to write your schedule on the board as a morning activity that keeps them busy while you're taking care of things. These are some professional examples of visual supports or projects that I've done in Publisher. I told you that just about everything I do that's not a word processing tool or form or document, I'm using Publisher. This is our employee calendar that I did for last year. The one I did for this year, I just turned in for approval from our board. This is in a Publisher document. I went into Excel, I went online, I found a 22, 23, 12-month calendar in a format that I liked. I took a snippet, my snippet tool. Once I got the Excel, and then I went into colored all the pertinent days and days off, and colored cells that I wanted, that in the way that I wanted them to look, according to the key that I created in Excel. Then I took a snippet, the snipping tool that you have if you have a PC. Probably have a similar tool in Mac. And I just snipped those 12 months without all the extraneous information, snipped it, which creates a picture file. I cut it and pasted it into Publisher. I created a text box where I did the title. I created a table in Word and did the key down in the bottom, and then cut and pasted that table and the key into the Publisher document, as well as I did a little text box with the year, and I cut and pasted a picture file of our logo. And then I situated it all in Publisher until it was the way I liked it. I put a border around it, and then I saved it as PDF, and now we're submitting it to our board for approval. And as you can see, I mean, I have fun doing these things, people. It's not hard. It's not hard. And look how pretty that example looks. This is an example of a statewide brochure that describes IDEA Part C to Part D transition for families who have babies who have disabilities, who are transitioning into public school programs at the age of 3. So it's a 2-page trifold brochure that's in Publisher. You can start with the template. And this was actually a template that I did that was a copy of a template that I did years ago because I liked it, and it printed well and didn't cut off, side borders or anything. And then I just tweaked it to accommodate this particular project. I love working with my Bitmojis in my presentations, as you probably saw a couple in my PowerPoints. All the people in my region, I use my Bitmojis, and the way I do that is I take a screenshot on my phone from my Bitmoji for whatever I want it to say, and then I email it to myself, and it always emails as a picture file. It's just a default. So you take your screenshot, send it to your email, or attach it. You'll attach it from your screenshots from your phone into an email. And then I download it from my email. And so that goes into it would go into your download folder. Then I go into my download folder on my computer, right click, cut or copy that picture file. And then I paste it into a publisher document like you can see here. And then that's where I can crop all the cell phone pictures that were on it and get, crop it around all the cell phone. I wish I had that. I need to add that picture of how it looked originally. And I can show you that in a second. But anyway, that way I could crop off all the stuff that's extraneous on the cell phone screenshot. And then once I got all that done, then I can right click, save as a picture. And now I have JPEGs. It's JPEGs of all kinds. This is just 4 of them. I think now my publisher file has something like 12 pages of different Bitmojis of me that I use for different things. This, we used to have to submit monthly calendars to our boss of what activities we were doing that he would share with our directors. So you would go to the templates and make a calendar. I liked the basic ones that didn't have any fancy stuff. And then I would add my own graphics, picture files, things to highlight, like you can see in the yellow boxes of what's upcoming, what I'm working on still from last month, any conferences, et cetera, et cetera. And I use visuals all the time. And so I use graphics and visuals whenever I can. Another sample of a student agenda. A picture, I saw this poster, I loved it. So I created my own. And each of those colored letters is an individual letter in Publisher. And then I just resized the subsequent ones so that they could all be different colors. And just created it all myself from a prototype. You mentioned, I showed you these items that you would use on a visual schedule or a classroom visual schedule. This is actually a visual schedule of an RTI training, in-person training that I did actually before the pandemic, and where I did a lot of in-person trainings, or most of them. Actually, now I do mostly online because we can train hundreds% more people. So anyway, this was a Word document. I created my agenda for that particular training. I printed it in a poster, and then I put it on an easel during my training. And then as we completed the day, I would check mark the boxes to indicate what we were finished with as we went throughout the day, which is what you would, a sample of what I did for my adult teachers and administrators, which is exactly what you could be doing for kindergartners all the way up. You would just create a schedule that's age appropriate, developmentally appropriate, etc. Posters created in Publisher. Saw a prototype online and created a poster out of it. Now, let's go and see. Actually, I don't know that we have time. We're looking at about 45 minutes, I believe, into this session. And so let's see how we're doing. Yeah, we're looking at about 45 minutes. So I don't think we'll have time to do the trip, but I'm willing to do that for anybody who just wants to ask. So a visual agenda items or strips for any kind of age person or adult, child or an adult, using the training strips and other examples I was going to show you, but you've also seen many examples in the presentation. Moving forward, ask your IT person, if you don't already have Microsoft Publisher on your computer, ask your IT person to add it. They will have the administrative login codes, I'm sure. Remember that if you're working on a Mac or another kind of or Chromebook or another system that doesn't have Microsoft Publisher, there are in fact alternative programs. Learn about using your snipping tool. Your snipping tool will allow you to grab any visual that you're finding online and use it without having to create anything yourself. You can just grab it with your mouse and create a picture file and save it in a folder. Learn about using picture files. I'm doing a picture file, I believe session, I think it's either in May and April, like I mentioned. I have 2 more sessions left before the end of the school year. One of them is on merging, mail merging, using a database and merging it into a certificate or something, and then formatting picture files. So go online to REC9 schedule and see what's coming up and register, or view those sessions online. Using pictures from your cell phone, like I do with my Bitmojis, and you can create teacher materials that your kids would love and that you will love. Start at least with an overall classroom schedule, overall visual agenda, Every classroom needs them and has them. It is a requirement within your teacher competencies, whether you realize that or not. Your principals are supposed to be indicating on the observational domains for your teacher evaluation, whether or not you have a overall classroom schedule that is in use and is something that indicates chronological activities throughout the day. So if you don't have it, you need to get one in your classroom because it's a requirement. Behavioral and academic expectations. You can have separate schedules for different purposes. You want to make sure it's chronological with appropriate assignments, page numbers, etc., as appropriate, that you're going to be addressing throughout the day or that are important for your children to know and to follow through with for tomorrow. Having some type of visual support for everything you expect students, EAs, and everyone who's coming into your classroom to know and do. Adults need visual supports too. Probably sometimes in some ways more than children, because we get into habits. We don't pay attention like we should. Teachers, including myself, we're not the greatest at following instructions. So we need instructions. Understand that you need to be creating and guiding the EAs that work in your classroom. They're not going to, many times they won't do what they need to be doing on their own. You need to, and anybody who looks in your classroom and sees visual schedules for the adults, or if a principal walks in and is doing a tour, having a visual support in that classroom that allows anybody visiting to know what you're doing and why you're doing it and what's coming next, etc. These are the two websites now where you can find the archived sessions, the REC9 website and the New Mexico Regional Education Cooperative Association. That's the website that encompasses all 10 RECs in the state. The REC staffs are people like myself are the ones presenting these sessions. So you can find these sessions on both the REC9 website, who has the contract for the statewide technology initiative, as well as the REC Association webpage, whereby you can learn more about RECs in New Mexico. So I know there's no one attending the session, so I know there was no questions. These are the two sessions that I have coming up, as I mentioned, mail merging for certificates, awards, etc. at the end of the month, and then formatting and using picture files that we create from the snipping tool, etc. or your Bitmojis or whatever. Here is my contact information. Please feel free to email me at lsegura@nmhu.edu. And I can send you any of the follow-up documents that you might want to use and start tweaking for yourself. They will be publisher or Word documents. So please email me. I'm happy to share. So I hope some of you out there in New Mexico or anywhere else will be viewing this session sometime soon. And I'm available for any questions, as any of us are in this project and in New Mexico RECs. So I see you all. Take good care and good luck creating wonderful visual supports. So I will stop sharing and I will stop recording.